It all started on a bright Saturday afternoon. The sun was shining brightly, birds were chirping, and there wasn't a cloud in sight. It felt like one of those perfect days where everything seemed right with the world. At least that's how it began for Alex. They had just returned home from running errands earlier than planned, looking forward to relaxing in their cozy little house. Alex lived alone, and they loved their quiet life. Their backyard was their pride and joy, a small but beautiful space filled with greenery, colorful flowers, and most importantly, a sparkling private pool. This pool wasn't just any ordinary pool. It was something Alex had dreamed about for years. After months of saving every penny, they finally managed to install it last summer. To Alex, it wasn't just water surrounded by tiles. It was an escape, a place where they could unwind after long, stressful days at work. But that peaceful bubble burst the moment Alex walked through the gate into their backyard. As soon as they stepped closer to the pool, their hearts sank. There she was, Karen, their neighbor from 2 houses down. She was sprawled out on one of Alex's lounge chairs, sipping what looked like a fruity cocktail. Her neon pink bikini practically screamed for attention, and empty chip bags and soda cans were scattered around her like confetti. And then, there was the pool itself, ripples moving across its surface as if someone had been splashing around carelessly. For a second, Alex couldn't believe what they were seeing. How did Karen even get inside? The gate was locked, or at least it was supposed to be. Before Alex could process anything, Karen spotted them and waved lazily, not even bothering to sit up or look remotely guilty. "Oh, hey, Alex," she called out cheerfully, as though she belonged there. "Thanks so much for letting me use your pool. It's so relaxing." Letting her? Alex blinked, trying to wrap their head around what was happening. No, they hadn't invited Karen. In fact, they'd never once mentioned the pool to her. Yet here she was, acting like she owned the place. Alex stood frozen, gripping the grocery bag tightly in their hands. A mix of emotions bubbled inside them. Anger, disbelief, and frustration, all fighting for dominance. Finally, Alex found their voice. "What are you doing here?" they asked, keeping their tone calm despite the storm brewing inside. Karen shrugged casually, as if breaking into someone's property was no big deal. "I saw your pool and figured, why not? It's such a waste to keep it all to yourself, don't you think?" A waste? Alex almost laughed at the absurdity of it. They worked hard for this pool. Every single detail, the design, the tiles, the landscaping around it was carefully chosen. And now Karen was treating it like some kind of public amenity. Worse still, she didn't seem to understand that this was private property. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Either way, it left a bitter taste in Alex's mouth. Things only got worse when Alex noticed other signs of Karen's intrusion. Footprints near the edge of the pool suggested she hadn't come alone. Later that evening, while scrolling through social media, Alex stumbled upon photos posted by Karen's friends. There were pictures of people laughing, eating pizza, and jumping into the pool during what appeared to be an impromptu party. Someone had even captioned the post, "Best day ever at Karen's new favorite hangout spot." That was the final straw. Alex realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. Karen wasn't simply borrowing the pool because she felt like it. She was making herself at home, inviting others over, and turning Alex's sanctuary into her personal playground. The thought made Alex's blood boil. Something had to be done. But how do you deal with someone who has absolutely no respect for boundaries? Little did Alex know this was only the beginning of a bizarre chain of events that would turn their peaceful neighborhood upside down. What started as a minor irritation was about to spiral into something far more dramatic and unforgettable. After discovering Karen lounging by their pool and throwing unauthorized parties, Alex decided it was time to put an end to this nonsense. They couldn't just ignore it anymore. It wasn't just about the pool, it was about respect. So the next day, Alex marched over to Karen's house, determined to have a serious conversation. Karen opened the door before Alex could even knock, already wearing her signature smug smile. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed like she knew exactly why Alex was there. "Oh, hey," she said casually, as if nothing had happened. "What brings you here?" Alex took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "We need to talk," they said firmly. "About what?" Karen asked, feigning innocence. "About your little visits to my pool," Alex replied, emphasizing the word visits with a hint of sarcasm. Karen tilted her head, pretending to be confused. "Visits? What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," Alex shot back. "You've been using my pool without permission. You brought people over, left trash everywhere, and acted like it's your own backyard." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically, like Alex was making a mountain out of a molehill. "Relax, okay? It's just a pool. You should be happy someone's actually using it. Half the time it just sits there empty anyway." That comment hit a nerve. Alex clenched their fists, struggling to keep their cool. "It's not just a pool," they said through gritted teeth. "It's my property, and whether it sits empty or not is none of your business. The point is, you don't get to barge in whenever you feel like it." Karen threw up her hands defensively. Fine, I won't come back. Happy now?" But Alex wasn't convinced. They could see right through Karen's act. She might say she wouldn't return, but deep down, they knew better. People like Karen didn't change their behavior overnight. Still, Alex gave her the benefit of the doubt, for now. "Good," they said curtly. "I hope you mean that." Over the next few days, Alex kept a close eye on their backyard. At first, everything seemed quiet. No strange footprints near the pool, no empty snack wrappers lying around. Maybe Karen had finally gotten the message. Maybe things would go back to normal. But then one morning, Alex noticed something odd while sipping coffee on their porch. There were fresh footprints leading toward the pool area, wet ones. Someone had clearly been there recently. Alex walked over to investigate and found more evidence. A soggy towel draped over one of the lounge chairs and a pair of flip-flops abandoned near the edge of the pool. Anger bubbled inside them again. Clearly, Karen hadn't listened. She, or maybe even her friends, had snuck back into the yard despite Alex's warning. This wasn't just annoying, it was infuriating. Every time Alex thought they'd put an end to this mess, Karen found a way to push their limits even further. Alex spent the rest of the day thinking about what to do next. Confronting Karen again wouldn't solve anything. She'd probably just deny it or laugh it off like last time. Calling the police felt too extreme for something like this. Besides, Alex didn't want to escalate things unnecessarily. No, they needed a different approach. Something creative, something bold. Something that would make Karen think twice before setting foot in their backyard ever again. As the sun set that evening, inspiration struck. Alex remembered scrolling through social media a few weeks ago and stumbling across a funny video. In the clip, someone had filled a kiddie pool with giant blocks of ice during a heat wave. The sight of kids slipping and sliding on the icy surface had gone viral, leaving viewers laughing and shaking their heads in disbelief. At the time, Alex had chuckled along with everyone else. But now, an idea began to form in their mind. What if they did the same thing, but with their actual pool? Turning the water into a frozen obstacle course would definitely send a strong message. Who in their right mind would want to swim in a pool full of ice? Not Karen, that's for sure. And if she tried anyway, well, that would be her problem. Excited by the plan, Alex started making preparations. First, they called around to local suppliers, asking about renting industrial-sized ice blocks. To their surprise, it wasn't as difficult as they'd expected. Within hours, Alex had arranged for a delivery truck to drop off several hundred pounds of ice early the next morning. The real challenge came when Alex realized they'd have to haul all those massive blocks into the pool themselves. It sounded exhausting, but they were willing to do whatever it took. If filling the pool with ice meant keeping Karen away, then so be it. By sunrise, Alex was already outside, ready to transform their backyard. One by one, they dragged the heavy ice blocks into the pool, stacking them neatly until the entire surface was covered. The effect was striking. The once clear blue water was now hidden beneath a shimmering layer of frosty white. Sunlight bounced off the ice, creating dazzling reflections that danced across the surrounding patio. When the job was done, Alex stepped back to admire their handiwork. It looked surreal, almost beautiful in a weird way. But more importantly, it served its purpose. There was no way Karen or anyone else would mistake this for a regular swimming pool. Satisfied with their work, Alex grabbed a cup of coffee and settled onto the porch, eagerly waiting to see how Karen would react. Little did Alex know, this was only the beginning of a much bigger showdown. Karen wasn't the type to back down easily, and when she saw what Alex had done, sparks were bound to fly. The morning after Alex transformed their pool into a frozen wonderland, they woke up feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. They couldn't wait to see Karen's reaction, but at the same time, they were bracing themselves for whatever drama might follow. After all, Karen wasn't exactly known for taking things lightly. If anything, she thrived on making scenes. Alex spent the early hours tidying up the backyard, making sure everything looked as dramatic as possible. The ice blocks glistened under the sunlight, reflecting tiny rainbows onto the surrounding patio. It was almost mesmerizing, if you ignored the fact that it was supposed to be a pool. To add an extra touch, Alex placed a small sign near the edge of the pool that read, "Private property, not a public pool." It wasn't rude, but it got the point across. By mid-morning, Alex decided to sit on their porch with a cup of coffee, keeping an eye out for Karen. They didn't have to wait long. Just as the clock struck noon, Karen appeared strolling confidently down the path toward Alex's backyard. She was wearing another loud swimsuit, this time bright yellow, and carrying a beach towel slung over her shoulder. Her flip-flops slapped against the pavement as she walked, oozing the same carefree attitude she always did. When Karen rounded the corner and caught sight of the pool, she stopped dead in her tracks. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the icy spectacle in front of her. Her mouth hung open slightly and her sunglasses slipped down her nose as she tilted her head, trying to process what she was seeing. Then slowly but surely, confusion turned into disbelief, and disbelief morphed into anger. "What is this?" Karen finally managed to say, pointing at the pool like it had personally offended her. Alex leaned back in their chair, sipping their coffee casually. "Looks like a pool full of ice to me," they replied, letting a hint of sarcasm creep into their voice. Karen marched closer, planting her hands on her hips. "Why would you do something like this? Are you serious right now?" "I'm very serious," Alex said calmly, setting their mug down on the table beside them. "I thought it might make the pool less appealing to people who use it without permission." Karen threw up her hands in frustration. "You're blaming me for this? I told you I wouldn't come back." "Funny," Alex said dryly. "Because I found wet footprints and a soggy towel here yesterday. Someone certainly didn't get the memo." Karen opened her mouth to argue but quickly shut it again. She knew she'd been caught red-handed, or rather, wet-footed. Instead of admitting guilt, though, she doubled down on her outrage. "This is ridiculous. Who does something like this? Do you realize how much effort went into planning our little gatherings here?" Alex raised an eyebrow, struggling not to laugh at the audacity of that statement. "Your little gatherings weren't exactly subtle, Karen. Trash everywhere, strangers showing up, it was like a party zone back here. And none of it was okay with me." Karen crossed her arms, glaring at Alex like they were the villain in some twisted soap opera. "Well, congratulations, you've ruined my plans for today. Happy now?" "No," Alex replied honestly. "But if this stops you from treating my property like your personal playground, then yeah, I'll take it." Karen huffed loudly, pacing back and forth near the pool. She clearly wanted to say more, but words failed her. Instead, she settled for muttering under her breath about how immature and petty Alex was being. But deep down, even Karen had to admit that this move was bold. Filling a pool with ice blocks wasn't something anyone saw coming, not even her. As Karen stormed off, still grumbling about how unfair everything was, Alex felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Sure, it was a drastic step, but desperate times called for desperate measures. And honestly, watching Karen squirm was kind of worth it. But Alex also knew this wasn't the end of the story. Karen wasn't the type to let something like this go without a fight. If anything, she'd probably double down on her antics just to prove a point. Still, Alex was ready for whatever came next. They'd drawn a line in the sand, or rather, in the ice, and they weren't backing down anytime soon. Later that afternoon, as Alex sat on their porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, they couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Who would have thought turning a pool into an ice rink could feel so empowering? It was funny in a way. Sometimes the simplest ideas were the most effective. Of course, Alex realized they were playing with fire. Karen wasn't going to take this lying down. In fact, Alex half expected her to retaliate in some outrageous way. But for now, they were content knowing they'd sent a crystal-clear message. This is my space, and you don't get to invade it whenever you feel like it. Little did Alex know, the neighborhood was already buzzing with gossip about the icy pool. Word traveled fast in their tight-knit community, and soon enough everyone had an opinion about what had happened. Some sided with Alex, praising them for standing up to Karen's entitled behavior. Others thought Alex had gone too far, calling the whole thing childish and unnecessary. Meanwhile, Karen was busy plotting her next move. Humiliated and furious, she refused to let Alex have the last laugh. By the time evening rolled around, she'd concocted a plan that she believed would not only embarrass Alex, but also win back the support of their neighbors. What she didn't realize, however, was that this feud was far from over, and things were about to get even messier. The icy pool quickly became the talk of the neighborhood. By the next morning, it seemed like everyone had heard about Alex's bold move. Some people thought it was hilarious, genius even, while others shook their heads and muttered about how childish it all was. Either way, no one could deny that it made for an interesting story. Karen, on the other hand, was fuming. She couldn't believe Alex had gone to such lengths just to prove a point. To her, this wasn't about respect or boundaries. It was personal now. Every time she thought about that ridiculous pile of ice blocks sitting where her favorite hangout spot used to be, she felt a fresh wave of anger bubbling up inside her. And Karen didn't handle anger well. Nope. She turned it into fuel for revenge. Instead of backing off like most reasonable people might have done, Karen decided to fight fire with fire, or rather, ice with drama. She started spreading rumors around the neighborhood, painting herself as the victim in this whole situation. According to her version of events, Alex was being unreasonable and overly controlling. All I wanted was to enjoy the pool, she told anyone who would listen. But apparently having fun is against the rules. Not content with just gossiping, Karen came up with a plan to reclaim what she saw as rightfully hers: the pool. She announced that she was hosting a poolside barbecue the following weekend, a not-so-subtle jab at Alex's icy blockade. The invite list included nearly everyone on the block. Except Alex, of course. It was clear that Karen wasn't just throwing a party. She was making a statement. Word of the upcoming barbecue reached Alex sooner than Karen probably expected. A neighbor casually mentioned it during a chat over the fence, adding that it sounded like a fun way to bring everyone together. Alex forced a smile and nodded politely, but inside they were seething. So Karen was doubling down? Fine. If she wanted to play games, Alex was more than ready to step up their strategy. That night after dinner, Alex sat on the couch thinking about what to do next. They knew ignoring the barbecue wouldn't solve anything. In fact, it might only embolden Karen further. No, they needed to send another message, one that would make it absolutely clear that the pool was off limits no matter how many parties. Karen tried to throw. Inspiration struck when Alex remembered a prank they'd seen online years ago. Someone had dyed their backyard kiddie pool green and filled it with rubber snakes to scare away nosy raccoons. At the time, Alex had laughed at the creativity of it. But now, the idea sparked something bigger in their mind. What if they transformed the pool again? But this time, instead of ice, they created a scene so absurd that no one would dare touch it. The very next day, Alex got to work. First, they bought gallons of non-toxic green food coloring from a local store. Then they stopped by a party supply shop and picked up a bunch of plastic crocodile heads and rubber snakes. Back home, they drained some of the melted ice water from the pool and mixed in the dye until the entire surface turned a swampy, murky green. Finally, they arranged the fake reptiles around the edges and floated a few in the center for good measure. When the Transformation was complete. Alex stepped back to admire their handiwork. The once pristine pool now looked like something out of a jungle adventure movie. The green water shimmered eerily under the sun, and the plastic animals added a comical yet unsettling vibe. To top it off, Alex hung a new sign near the pool that read, "A private property. Enter at your own risk." Satisfied with their efforts, Alex settled onto the porch again, waiting for Karen's inevitable arrival. Sure enough, by late afternoon she showed up, dragging a folding chair and a cooler behind her. This time she wasn't alone. A small group of neighbors trailed behind her, chatting and laughing as though they were heading to a summer festival. Karen stopped short when she saw the pool. Her jaw dropped and her eyes widened in disbelief. For a moment she just stood there staring at the green water and the floating crocodiles. Then, slowly, she turned to face Alex, who was watching from the porch with a smug grin. "What is this?" Karen demanded, pointing dramatically at the pool. "It's a swamp," Alex replied calmly, leaning back in their chair. "I thought it fit the mood better than ice." Karen stomped closer, her face red with rage. "You're insane. You can't keep doing stuff like this." "I'm not doing anything wrong," Alex said with a shrug. "It's my pool. I can decorate it however I want." One of the neighbors piped up nervously, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, it does look kind of cool." "Cool?" Karen snapped, whirling around to glare at them. "It's disgusting. Who would even think of ruining a perfectly good pool like this?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "Ruining it? Karen, you're the one who keeps treating it like your own personal resort. Maybe this will finally make it clear that it's not available for public use." Karen clenched her fists, looking like she was about to explode. But before she could say anything else, another neighbor chimed in. "Honestly, Karen, maybe you should have listened when Alex asked you to stop using the pool." The comment hit Karen hard. She glanced around at the group, realizing that not everyone was on her side anymore. Some of the neighbors were nodding, in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Humiliated and defeated, Karen grabbed her chair and stormed off, muttering under her breath about how unfair everything was. As the crowd dispersed, Alex let out a long sigh of relief. They hadn't expected things to escalate quite this far, but at least it seemed like Karen was starting to lose support. Still, Alex knew this feud wasn't completely over. People like Karen didn't give up easily, and they were bound to try something else sooner or later. For now, though, Alex allowed themselves a small victory. Watching Karen squirm in front of their neighbors felt oddly satisfying. Sometimes standing your ground meant getting creative and messy, but hey, desperate times called for desperate measures. And judging by the looks on everyone's faces, Alex's swampy masterpiece had done its job. By the time Monday rolled around, the entire neighborhood was buzzing about Alex's swampy pool. The green water and floating crocodiles had become the centerpiece of every conversation, at the grocery store, during morning walks, even at the local coffee shop. People couldn't stop talking about it. Some thought it was hilarious, applauding Alex for their creativity and boldness. Others, however, weren't so amused. They called it childish and extreme, saying that Alex was taking things too far. Karen, of course, was at the center of all the drama. She wasn't about to let Alex have the last laugh, not without putting up a fight. In her mind, this feud had gone beyond just a pool. It was now a battle for respect and control. And Karen didn't lose battles. At least, that's what she told herself as she stewed over the weekend's events. On Tuesday morning, Karen decided to take matters into her own hands. She started visiting neighbors one by one, spinning a carefully crafted story about how Alex was being unreasonable and vindictive. "I just wanted to enjoy the pool," she'd say with a sigh, shaking her head like she was the victim in all this. "But instead of talking things out like adults, they keep doing these crazy things to humiliate me." To her surprise, some people actually listened. A few neighbors nodded sympathetically, agreeing that Alex's actions seemed a bit over the top. After all, turning a pool into a swamp wasn't exactly subtle. Others, though, weren't convinced. They remembered the photos Karen had posted online, pictures of her lounging by the pool, throwing parties and treating Alex's property like her own personal playground. Those images were hard to ignore, no matter how persuasive Karen tried to be. Meanwhile, Alex was dealing with their own share of mixed reactions. While plenty of neighbors supported them, others stopped by to express their concerns. "Don't you think this has gone far enough?" one neighbor asked gently during a casual chat over the fence. Alex sighed, running a hand through their hair. "Honestly? No. I've been patient for months. I warned Karen repeatedly, but she kept ignoring me. What else am I supposed to do?" The truth was, Alex hadn't expected the situation to spiral this way. Sure, they'd hoped their icy blockade and swamp transformation would send a clear message, but they hadn't anticipated dividing the neighborhood into two camps. Some people praised Alex for standing their ground, while others criticized them for escalating the conflict. It was exhausting, to say the least. As the days passed, tensions continued to rise. Karen's attempts to rally support against Alex only fueled more gossip and speculation. One afternoon, Alex overheard a group of neighbors whispering near the mailbox. When they approached, the conversation abruptly stopped, and everyone quickly dispersed. That moment stung more than Alex cared to admit. They hated feeling like the villain in someone else's story. Still, Alex refused to back down. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about setting boundaries and protecting their home. If giving up meant letting Karen walk all over them, then Alex wasn't willing to compromise. Deep down, they knew they were doing the right thing, even if it came at a cost. Karen, on the other hand, was growing increasingly desperate. Her plan to turn the neighborhood against Alex wasn't working as well as she'd hoped. Instead of rallying unanimous support, she'd only managed to create division. Frustrated and humiliated, she hatched yet another scheme. One she believed would finally put an end to Alex's antics once and for all. On Thursday evening, Karen sent out a mass text message inviting everyone to a poolside barbecue the following weekend. This time she made sure to emphasize that it was a community event, meant to bring everyone together. She even added a line about how important it was to resolve conflicts peacefully, a not-so-subtle dig at Alex. Of course, Alex wasn't included in the invite list. When news of the barbecue reached Alex, they couldn't help but roll their eyes. Clearly, Karen hadn't learned her lesson. Hosting yet another party near the pool wasn't going to solve anything. It was just going to escalate the situation further. But Alex also knew that ignoring it wouldn't work either. If Karen showed up with a bunch of neighbors, it would only reinforce her behavior and make Alex look like the unreasonable one. That night, Alex sat on their porch staring at the pool, brainstorming ways to handle the upcoming barbecue. They needed something big, something that would shut Karen down completely without crossing any lines. Then, inspiration struck. What if they transformed the pool one final time, making it utterly unusable for Karen's grand plans? Something so absurd that even the most stubborn neighbor would realize there was no point in arguing anymore. The next morning, Alex got to work. First, they drained the remaining green water from the pool and scrubbed it clean. Then they headed to a nearby hardware store and purchased several rolls of bright orange construction netting, the kind used to cordon off hazardous areas. Back at home, they stretched the netting across the pool, securing it tightly with bungee cords. To complete the look, they hung caution tape around the perimeter and placed a large sign in the middle that read, "Pool under maintenance. Do not enter." When the job was done, Alex stepped back to admire their handiwork. The pool looked like a construction zone, complete with barricades and warning signs. It was ridiculous, yes, but effective. There was no way Karen could claim ignorance this time. If she tried to throw her barbecue anyway, it would be painfully obvious that she was deliberately ignoring Alex's wishes. On Friday evening, Alex received a visit from one of their neighbors, a quiet older woman who lived a few houses down. She hesitated before speaking, clearly unsure how to phrase her thoughts. "Listen," she began gently. "I know you've been through a lot with Karen, but maybe it's time to find a way to move past this. Things are getting tense around here." Alex nodded, appreciating the concern. "I understand where you're coming from," they replied. "But until Karen respects my boundaries, I can't let this go. Trust me, I don't want to keep fighting either. But sometimes, people need to see the consequences of their actions." The neighbor gave a small nod and left, leaving Alex alone with their thoughts. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Standing your ground often came with sacrifices, especially when relationships were involved. But Alex also knew that giving in wasn't an option. Sometimes the hardest choices were the ones worth making. Little did Alex know, Karen was already planning her next move. Determined to reclaim her favorite spot, she decided to go all in for Saturday's barbecue. Consequences be damned. Unbeknownst to both of them, the showdown was about to reach its climax. Saturday morning arrived and the air was thick with anticipation. Alex woke up early, their mind racing with thoughts about what the day might bring. They knew Karen wasn't going to back down, not after all the effort she'd put into planning her community barbecue. But Alex also knew they had one last trick up their sleeve, thanks to the orange construction netting and caution tape now covering the pool. Still, they couldn't shake the feeling that today would be the turning point. Either Karen would finally get the message or things would spiral even further out of control. By late morning, the neighborhood began to buzz with activity. Cars pulled up along the street, and groups of neighbors carrying coolers, lawn chairs, and plates of food started making their way toward Alex's house. Karen led the charge, wearing an oversized straw hat and sunglasses like she was hosting some glamorous resort event. She chatted animatedly with the others, laughing loudly and pretending everything was perfectly normal. From Alex's porch, they could hear snippets of conversation. "Isn't this fun? What a great idea. I can't wait to see how it turns out." Alex watched silently from a distance, arms crossed as they leaned against the railing. They didn't say a word as Karen set up folding tables near the edge of the pool area, arranging chips, dips, and drinks like it was any other backyard gathering. A few neighbors glanced nervously at the pool, or rather, the construction zone turned pool. But no one said anything. It was clear that Karen was determined to ignore the obvious signs that the pool was off limits. As more people gathered, Alex decided it was time to make their presence known. They walked over calmly, stopping just short of the group. "Morning," Alex said evenly, their voice cutting through the chatter. Karen turned around, feigning surprise. "Oh, hey there. Glad you could join us." "I'm not joining anything," Alex replied, their tone firm but calm. "This is private property. I thought the signs made that clear." Karen gestured dramatically toward the pool. "It's not like you're actually using it right now. Why does it matter if we hang out here for a bit? We're just trying to have a good time." Alex raised an eyebrow. "A good time? On my property? Without permission? Again?" The tension in the air grew palpable. Some neighbors shifted uncomfortably, while others looked away, unwilling to intervene. One man spoke up hesitantly. "Look, maybe we should move this somewhere else. There are plenty of parks nearby." "No," Karen snapped, cutting him off. "We're staying right here. If Alex has a problem with it, they can leave." Alex let out a slow breath, shaking their head slightly. They'd expected this kind of reaction from Karen, but hearing her double down so brazenly still stung. Still, they weren't about to. Let her win this round. "Fine," Alex said, stepping closer to the pool. "If you're so set on having your party here, then let's see how well your guests handle the reality of the situation." With that, Alex reached for the sign hanging near the pool, a new addition they'd prepared the night before, and held it up for everyone to see. The bold letters spelled out a simple message: "Private property. Trespassers will be reported." Gasps rippled through the crowd as people exchanged uneasy glances. No one wanted to risk being reported to the authorities. It was one thing to attend a rogue barbecue, but quite another to knowingly trespass. Karen's face flushed red with anger. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, glaring at Alex. "Try. Me?" Alex shot back, their voice steady. "You've ignored every warning I've given you. You've treated my home like it belongs to you, and now you're dragging our neighbors into it. Enough is enough." For once, Karen didn't have a clever comeback. She stood there, fuming as the weight of Alex's words sank in. Slowly, the mood shifted. Neighbors began packing up their things, murmuring apologies as they retreated. Even those who had initially sided with Karen seemed to realize that this had gone too far. Within minutes, the once bustling barbecue scene dissolved into awkward silence. Karen stayed behind, refusing to leave until the bitter end. When the last guest disappeared down the street, she turned to Alex, her expression a mix of fury and humiliation. "You've ruined everything," she spat. "No," Alex corrected softly. "You did that yourself. All I wanted was for you to respect my space. That's it." Without another word, Karen stormed off, leaving behind empty soda cans and crumpled napkins scattered across the grass. Alex sighed deeply, surveying the mess before heading inside to grab a trash bag. Cleaning up felt like a small price to pay for finally reclaiming their peace. Over the next few days, life in the neighborhood began to settle back into its usual rhythm. While some neighbors avoided Alex altogether, others stopped by to apologize for getting caught in the middle of the drama. A few even thanked them quietly for standing their ground. As for Karen, she kept her distance, muttering under her breath whenever she passed by Alex's house. But she never stepped foot near the pool again. In the end, Alex learned an important lesson. Setting boundaries wasn't always easy, but it was necessary. Sometimes people pushed limits because they didn't think anyone would push back. And while Alex regretted the toll the feud had taken on their relationships, they knew they'd done the right thing. Their pool, their sanctuary, was finally theirs again. As weeks turned into months, the pool became a symbol of resilience rather than conflict. Alex filled it with fresh water, added a few potted plants around the edges, and spent countless hours lounging by it in quiet solitude. Itio wasn't just a pool anymore. It was proof that standing up for yourself could lead to peace, even if it took a little chaos to get there.